Nous voulons établir la libre circulation de l'information. Une nation qui a peur de laisser son peuple juger librement de ce qui est vrai et de ce qui est faux est une nation qui a peur de son peuple. Président John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Le 31 janvier 1992, NBC a effectué un sondage auprès des Américains pour leur demander qui, à leur avis, avait tué le président Kennedy. NBC a reçu 30 000 appels en 3 heures. Pour 51%, ce fut l'œuvre de la CIA. En 1967, seul un homme mettait en cause la CIA, Jim Garrison.
Lee Harvey Oswald killed no one at all. So the point is, it wasn't a question of being alone or with anybody. He had nothing to do with the assassination.
I had the impression, both before and after the assassination, that Jim Garrison was an absolute nut.
John Kennedy was killed by a major force. The simplest way to describe it is a Central Intelligence Agency. I was burned so many times that I stopped giving interviews. In other words, if the words ended up in print, they were twisted in an indescribable fashion. If they were for TV, repeatedly the editing resulted in an absurdity. So I reached a point where I concluded it would be almost useless to try and communicate my position, and I was tired of being harassed.
Jim Garrison fut élu District Attorney de la Nouvelle-Orléans le 3 mars 1962. C'était son premier mandat. C'était également la première fois qu'un magistrat politiquement indépendant était nommé à ce poste. Il avait 43 ans, près de 4 de moins que le président Kennedy. Contrairement au président, il ne disposait pas de gros moyens, mais comme John Kennedy, il passait extrêmement bien à la télévision. Après avoir été pilote de chasse, il avait appartenu au FBI, il était marié et père de famille. Sitôt installé dans ses fonctions, il entreprit de fermer les cercles de jeux clandestins et les bordels de la Nouvelle-Orléans. Ces initiatives scandalisèrent les autres magistrats qui fermaient les yeux sur ses activités. Ils décidèrent de lui couper ses crédits. Garrison critiqua ouvertement les menées de ces 8 magistrats qu'il avait surnommés les 8 vaches sacrées. Les 8 magistrats, indignés par sa réaction, décidèrent de le poursuivre en justice. Dans l'un de ses attendus les plus célèbres, la Cour suprême jugea que Garrison avait le droit de critiquer des fonctionnaires. Ce droit, Garrison allait en user abondamment pendant 5 ans. Cette fois à propos de l'assassinat du président Kennedy.
The case as it stood was a winnable case. It's a rather long story about how the government managed to tear it to pieces like a mad dog.
Le 1er mars 1967, 5 ans après son entrée en fonction, Jim Garrison stupéfia l'Amérique et plus particulièrement la Nouvelle-Orléans en arrêtant Clay Shaw, homme d'affaires connu, originaire de cette ville. Il l'accusait de complicité dans l'assassinat de Kennedy. Garrison accusait Shaw d'être l'un des agents de la CIA qui avait voulu faire de Lee Harvey Oswald le bouc émissaire dans l'assassinat de Kennedy.
He completely believed that his case would never get that his case would be stopped, that it would never get to trial, either because of his death or for some other reason.
If Garrison had succeeded in proving that Shaw was one of the ringleaders and that Shaw was connected with CIA, he would have pulled the plug on the conspiracy, which then immediately causes the public to drop the Oswald idea. If you've got a conspiracy, you've got more than one man up in a window with an old gun, and they would have stared in the face the great big letters, W-H-Y. Why was the president killed?
Le président John Kennedy et la CIA.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
En janvier 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy est intronisé 35e président des États-Unis par Earl Warren, président de la Cour suprême. John Kennedy succède au président Eisenhower. Il hérite d'une politique étrangère qui va lui valoir l'hostilité de la hiérarchie militaire et de la CIA. L'Amérique est en pleine guerre froide, mais comme le pays est en paix, les actions militaires sont clandestines et dirigées par la CIA, dont le directeur est Allen Dulles. Du temps d'Eisenhower, la CIA avait les mains libres pour encourager la politique étrangère de guerre froide.
In 1953, a few CIA people managed to make some changes in Iran that President Eisenhower liked very much. In 1954, a few of us in Guatemala made some changes that seemed almost without effort.
Quand le président Kennedy entre en fonction, il doit immédiatement prendre des décisions concernant 2 régions déjà quadrillées par la CIA. Au Vietnam, d'une part, où Eisenhower a dépêché 15 000 conseillers militaires. À Cuba de l'autre, où la CIA a mis au point une opération destinée à renverser Fidel Castro.
First, I want to say that there will not be, under any conditions, be an intervention in Cuba by United States Armed Forces.
Kennedy est réticent, mais la CIA parvient à le convaincre que sa brigade anticastriste débarquée à la baie des Cochons provoquera un soulèvement populaire à Cuba et entraînera la chute de Fidel Castro. L'opération de la baie des Cochons se solde par un désastre.
Many of the participants in the Bay of Pigs were on that landing force because I had known them personally.
À la CIA, certains rendent, à tort, Kennedy responsable de cette défaite, affirmant qu'il n'a pas voulu fournir un appui aérien suffisant.
There were people in the agency who loved Jack Kennedy, but not in this particular Bay of Pigs sector, and that's where the rabid people are.
Detailed discussions are not to conceal responsibility because I'm the responsible officer of the government.
Le président, embarrassé par l'affaire de la baie des Cochons, blâme la CIA.
He fired Allen Dulles, longtime director of Central Intelligence, General Cabell as deputy, and it's interesting to recall that General Cabell was brother of the mayor of Dallas at the time President Kennedy was killed.
And John Kennedy's words when he fired him were roughly along these lines, that if this were England, I would have to go. But this is America, and you have to go. Well, General Cabell never forgave him for that, especially for causing the end of a brilliant intelligence career. And you can't help but feel that that's not totally irrelevant to the subsequent events when John Kennedy attempted to drive in an open car through the town where General Cabell's brother was mayor.
Après enquête sur les activités de la CIA à Cuba, Kennedy est obligé de réduire les pouvoirs des services secrets.
The National Security Action Memorandum number 55, dated, I believe, in about early July of '61, and it began with this line. He said, I hold the Joint Chiefs of Staff to be as responsible for advice to me in peacetime as they are for advice in wartime. Well, that positive statement just shook up the establishment because it meant that Kennedy was going to shatter the CIA in 1,000 pieces.
Not the exclusive property of Republicans or Democrats.
Le président ordonne également le retrait de la quasi-totalité des 15 000 conseillers militaires au Vietnam.
This caused rising feelings among the industry. They felt that here's this enormous potential and we're not going to realize it.
The gulf between Kennedy and the CIA has widened almost irreparably.
Ce désaccord croissant entre Kennedy et la CIA à propos du Vietnam, c'est Arthur Kroc qui le dévoile en première page du New York Times, daté du 3 octobre 1963. Voici en quels termes. À 2 reprises, la CIA a froidement refusé d'obéir aux instructions de Washington transmises par l'ambassadeur Henry Cabot Lodge. La CIA les désapprouvait. L'importance croissante de la CIA est comparée à une tumeur maligne contre laquelle les hauts fonctionnaires et même la Maison-Blanche ne peuvent pas grand-chose. Si jamais les États-Unis sont victimes d'une tentative de putsch destinée à renverser le gouvernement, ce sera l'œuvre de la CIA. La CIA dispose d'un pouvoir phénoménal et n'a strictement de compte à rendre à personne.
There was no need for anybody to inform Lyndon Johnson of the assassination because it was not necessary to burden them with the knowledge because it would be available to serve the move into Southeast Asia in any case. A larger part of the government bureaucracy, meaning key individuals here and there, were aware than one would assume because there was too much of an overnight adjustment. The FBI was in full cooperation with the CIA and the perpetrators of the assassination within hours.
Although the president is running behind schedule, he pauses momentarily to shake a few hands.
Le 22 novembre 1963, le président Kennedy et sa femme Jacqueline arrivent à Dallas, au Texas. La foule enthousiaste lui manifeste son affection. Mais il y a d'autres manifestations. Sur les centaines de tracts distribués sur le parcours que doit suivre le cortège, on accuse Kennedy d'avoir trahi les États-Unis, d'avoir trahi la Constitution et d'avoir abandonné la souveraineté de son pays au profit des Nations Unies contrôlées par les régimes communistes. Dans le Dallas Morning News du jour, une pleine page de publicité souhaite sarcastiquement la bienvenue à Monsieur Kennedy et non au président Kennedy. On lui demande entre autres pourquoi l'Amérique latine est devenue anti-américaine ou pro-communiste. À Dallas, les mesures de sécurité prises pour protéger le cortège sont curieusement restreintes quand on sait les menaces qui ont été proférées contre le président. Quelques jours plus tôt, à Miami, le cortège prévu a été annulé à la suite d'une menace identique. Le 9 novembre, la police de Miami a découvert un complot destiné à assassiner le président avec des fusils d'assaut. Willie Somerset, un informateur travaillant pour la police et le FBI, a secrètement enregistré une conversation avec Joseph Miltyr, au cours de laquelle le nommé Miltyr, un extrémiste de droite, lui exposait son projet. Interrogé par le FBI, Miltyr nie avoir proféré ces menaces. Il est relâché, mais la police de Miami annule le cortège prévu. Le 17 novembre, le FBI fait parvenir un câble à tous ses agents spéciaux concernés. En voici le contenu. Menace d'assassinat contre le président Kennedy à Dallas, 22 et 23 novembre. Le 22 novembre, l'actuel président George Bush, à l'époque respectable homme d'affaires, révèle qu'un certain James Parrott a parlé de tuer le président lors de sa venue à Houston.
The assassination would not have been attempted without assurance that certain members of the Dallas police force were going to cooperate. I think it's fair to describe the assassination as essentially a no-risk operation.
A couple hours before Kennedy was to arrive, the sheriff called us in, what I call the street people, the plainclothesmen, the detectives, and he instructed us that we were to stand out in front and in no way take part in the security of that motorcade, that we were merely spectators and nothing more.
A military unit that has had, in addition to its ordinary duties, a training for what we call presidential protection. They need an order from the Secret Service. In the case of Dallas, the colonel was led to believe that his unit wasn't needed, that another one would be there. Everything was all right. You won't be needed.
As late as Thursday, November 21st. The newspapers in Dallas showed the route of the motorcade as it came out Main, continuing through the extension of Main, going in the middle of that big pasture they call Dealey Plaza. On Thursday evening, at the 11th hour, the route was changed by the administration of Mayor Earl Cabell. The route was changed to turn right on Houston and then left on Elm, not only going by the ambush nest where the waiting rifles were, but also going by the building in which they had pre-located the Patsy. And the indications are 3 teams at the minimum, with two teams shooting from the grassy knoll, that's 4 men, and at least 1 team in the back, although not on the 6th floor at that window. They could not have been going any faster as they passed the depositor, as they passed through the target zone of 11 or 12 miles an hour, which is virtually stationary if you have rifles of professionals waiting for you.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. Stand by just a moment, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on. The motorcade is coming by here. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car. We understand Governor and Mrs. Connolly are in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy. We can't see who has been hit, if anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong.
À l'hôpital Parkland, l'équipe médicale met tout en œuvre pour tenter de sauver la vie du président. Le docteur Perry lui insère un tube dans la trachée en utilisant la plaie provoquée par la balle qui lui a traversé la gorge. Le docteur Robert McClelland est celui qui a vu de plus près la blessure que le président avait au crâne.
The wound was in the back part of the head and just about where I'm indicating here, and was probably involved in an area about that big around, and perhaps larger, but certainly no smaller than that. And a portion of the brain fell out onto the cart. Mrs. Kennedy behaved very admirably, I think. She certainly was in a state of shock, as would be expected. She was carrying a portion of his brain in one of her hands and gave it to one of the physicians. She was obviously much more comfortable staying inside and stayed there, in fact, until a priest arrived to administer the last rites.
He died of a gunshot wound in the brain, with a bullet right through the head.
John Kennedy was obviously shot from the front. Everybody knows it. Virtually everybody in Dealey Plaza rushed to the grassy knoll, where they heard the sounds.
They came from a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
From behind the overpass over there, triple overpass.
Right over about 20 or 30 feet from the other end of that little picket fence.
And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees.
We all four seen about the same thing as the shot. The smoke came from behind the hedge.
And then as the cart got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall.
When I stated I felt like the second and third shots could not have been fired from the same rifle, they reminded me that I wasn't an expert.
There was 3 or 4 real close together, and it was must have been the first one that shot him, because that's when that was the time I took the picture. And during that time, after I took the picture and the shots were still being fired, I decided I'd better get on the ground. I was no more than 15 foot from the car and in line of fire, evidently.
just as Mary started to take the picture and the president came right even with us, 2 shots, we looked at him and he was looking at a dog in the middle of the seat. 2 shots rang out and he grabbed his chest and a look of pain on his face and fell across toward Jackie, and she fell over on him and said, "My God, he's shot." And there was an interval, and then 3 or 4 more shots rang out. By that time, the motorcade had sped away.
In the vicinity of the 2 men, there was a flash of light, there was something which occurred which caught my eye in this immediate area on the embankment.
Ed Hoffman, un sourd-muet qui se trouvait à proximité de la passerelle voisine, a très bien vu ce qui se passait derrière la palissade.
A cigarette. He was smoking a cigarette. And then a little bit later, he saw more smoke, and he saw the man turn around, and he had a gun in his hand, or a rifle. Saw him turn. He turned towards the area where he was standing, and he saw him run and throw the gun to a man that was wearing a railroad uniform. And the man took the gun apart and put it in a bag behind the railroad controls, the box there. And then he was frightened. He knew something was going on. And he started waving for a police officer. He saw a security guard or a Secret Service. He wasn't sure what he was, but he was trying to get his attention and tell him what he had saw. And the man turned his gun towards him, and it frightened my father, so he left.
D'autres témoins ont entendu des coups de feu provenant de derrière. Des photos prises immédiatement après l'attentat montrent un homme en civil qui ramasse une balle. D'autres indiquent un impact sur le trottoir, provoqué par une balle tirée depuis le dépôt de livres. James Stagg, qui se trouvait près du triple pont en aval de la limousine et face au dépôt de livres, a été touché par un fragment de plomb ou de béton. On découvre ensuite un impact de balle dans le tableau de bord de la limousine présidentielle, ainsi qu'une étoile dans le pare-brise. Billy Argas, le motard d'escorte qui se trouvait à l'arrière gauche de la limousine présidentielle, a été éclaboussé par le sang et par des fragments de cerveau du président. Un autre photographe surprend Jack Ruby sur les lieux de l'attentat. Près de 20 arrestations se succèdent après l'attentat. Seuls 3 sont consignés.
Eugene Hale Brading, the high-level courier for the mafia, who was arrested at the scene under the name of Jim Braden and interviewed by the FBI, then turned loose.
Attention all squad. Attention all squad. The suspect in the shooting at Elm in Houston is reported to be an unknown white male, approximately 30.
À 12h45, 15 minutes après l'attentat, la police diffuse le signalement d'un suspect, signalement fondé sur une information.
Report that an officer has been involved in a shooting in the 400 block of East 10.
À 1h15, l'agent Tippit est abattu à proximité du carrefour Patton. Peu après 13h, la police est prévenue qu'un homme répondant au signalement du meurtrier de l'agent Tippit, un blanc d'une trentaine d'années, s'est introduit dans le cinéma Le Texas sans payer son billet d'entrée.
That's the only report that the police got before they sent 15 cars to surround the Texas Theater. And even though the Dallas police have an admirable concern for the protection of property, they usually would have held back a few police cars in reserve, even for a type of criminal who would go into a theater without a ticket.
Assistait également à l'arrestation d'un homme d'une trentaine d'années, l'adjoint du district attorney et une armée de journalistes.
Without knowing precisely who they were, I think there had to be assurance that there would be, at least at the outset, a few elements of the media that would be cooperative from the beginning, because they had to start off with a certain momentum from the beginning before reality started to interfere with the building of the illusion.
À 13h50, 1h20 après l'attentat sur la personne du président, Lee Harvey Oswald est arrêté pour le meurtre du policier Tippit. Placé en garde à vue, on s'aperçoit qu'Oswald a 2 pièces d'identité différentes.
Full name is Lee Harvey Oswald.
OSWALD.
I really don't know what the situation is about. Nobody has told me anything except that I'm accused of murdering a policeman. I know nothing more than that, and I do request for someone to come forward to give me a legal assistance.
Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
À Dallas, le policier chargé de l'enquête sur le meurtre de Tippit, l'inspecteur en retraite James Leavell, est le premier à interroger Oswald.
His demeanor was awfully calm. I know that I could not have answered the questions in the same manner that he did had I actually been guilty of killing two people.
Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
Lee Oswald, who's been rewarded for his work in Russia, in the government's behalf, by being given training as an expert photographer. When they arrested him, he had over $3,000 worth of camera equipment, so he was no ordinary photographer.
According to Dallas Police Captain Will Fritz's own notes, he showed the famous backyard photograph to Oswald during the 12 hours of interrogation. And Oswald said it's a fake, and I can prove it, and I will prove it in time.
Peu après l'arrestation d'Oswald, la police découvre deux photographies montrant Oswald qui pose fièrement en brandissant deux journaux communistes, un fusil et un pistolet. Stephen Jaffe, expert photographe chargé d'analyser les clichés, confirma pour Jim Garrison ce qu'Oswald ne vécut pas assez longtemps pour prouver lui-même.
Whoever framed Oswald evidently used only one picture of his face and planted it on someone else's body. Then to give the face on the right a different look, it seems they airbrushed some of the facial features and tilted the head slightly, and in doing so, they tilted the shadow under his nose. That it was one face is easily demonstrated. If you take the face on the right and superimpose it over the face on the left, the features line up. But when you slide the face back, you see that it had to be tilted. The second and more obvious proof is with the position of the bodies. The body on the right seems to be closer to the camera. If so, the head should be larger. However, you can see when you slide it over the face on the left, the faces are the same size. This means the bodies should be the same height. They are not.
La nouvelle de l'arrestation d'Oswald fut aussitôt diffusée dans le monde entier. Fletcher Poughty se trouvait alors en Nouvelle-Zélande.
About noontime, we bought the paper. One thing I noticed clearly was the New Zealand paper had a full biographical story of this Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, on that day, he was I believe in a T-shirt or a polo shirt, but certainly not a business suit. Now, this was on the 23rd of November there, and I understand the time differences and all that. You couldn't gather that much information on a relatively random 24-year-old boy. Somebody had written the story about Oswald before he ever shot the president. Just had to be.
Oswald, in the late fall of '62, and a little bit in '63, had lived at 602 Elsbeth. Okay, but that address never showed up on any of his applications or employment forms for the book depository. Colonel Jones with 4th Army Military Intelligence got a call from his people in Dallas, and they said they've got a suspect here, and his name is Alex J. Hydell. And Jones said he went to Military Intelligence files and looked up Alex J. Hydell and found it cross-referenced to Lee Harvey Oswald, and it gave his address as 605 Elsbeth. And what does all that mean? Army intelligence tipped off the Dallas police that the man they wanted was Lee Harvey Oswald.
Juste avant l'arrestation d'Oswald, deux fusils différents avaient été découverts au 6e étage de l'immeuble servant de dépôt de manuels scolaires. Les policiers Roger Craig et Seymour Wiseman avaient trouvé un Mauser de calibre 7,65.
And we weren't any more than 6 or 8 inches from the rifle, and stamped right on the barrel of the rifle was 7.65 Mauser.
L'autre fusil trouvé sur place était un Mannlicher Carcano. On découvrit qu'il appartenait à un certain A.J. Heidel. pseudonyme d'Oswald. Quand on peut faire le lien entre cette arme et Oswald, le Mauser disparut. Roger Craig fut également l'un des premiers policiers à découvrir les douilles vides du Mannlicher Carcano, l'arme d'Oswald, qui, selon lui, après usage, avait été éjectée de façon peu ordinaire.
Deputy Sheriff Luke Mooney was with me when we found the shells. We found 3 holes beside the window on the 6th floor. They were lying 3 in a row, not more than an inch apart, all pointing in the same direction.
And the paraffin test would show whether or not you fired a rifle. The results were available before the end of the day. They showed that Oswald had not fired a rifle. But the way that that was handled was it was announced to the world that the paraffin test showed that he had fired a rifle.
Chief, we understand you have the results of the paraffin test which were made to determine whether Oswald had fired a weapon. Can you tell us what those tests show?
I understand that it was positive.
The fingerprints on the boxes added up to the fingerprints of a large number of policemen, one unidentified man, and no fingerprints of Lee Oswald.
If we can put his prints on the rifle, I certainly would connect him with the rifle.
Aussitôt après l'arrestation d'Oswald, bien que ce ne fût pas du ressort du FBI, Edgar Hoover vint sur place pour prendre l'affaire en main.
In fact, I have a record in which Hoover said that even though he had no jurisdiction, he started the investigation before being told to.
It never dawned on us until the last minute that they were going to take over the whole investigation. Same thing when they took the body away. They violated the laws of the state of Texas, and they had no jurisdiction over it.
We in the police department here did not know he was in Dallas. I understand the FBI did know that he was in Dallas.
The first law is cover the Bureau's ass, and the second is cover your own.
This has been a joint effort by the Secret Service, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Dallas Police Department.
Les témoins oculaires du meurtre de Tippit ne reconnurent pas l'assassin en voyant Oswald. Selon le journaliste Jim Mars, la présentation des suspects par la police fut plus que douteuse.
Late in the evening of the day of the assassination, and everybody in the country had heard of the name Lee Harvey Oswald, and that the shots had come from the Texas School Book Depository. So can you imagine how fair the lineup was when Oswald has to step forward and say, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald, I work at the Texas School Book Depository. Would it have been hard to pick him out of that one? Not a chance. The lineups were a farce.
We try to make it look as authentic as, make them look alike as much as possible. Same height, same weight, and so forth. Now, in Scoggins, he said that him mouthing and raising hell, he did. Well, he didn't raise all that. He did complain because he said, I got a T-shirt on and the rest of them got shirts on.
Well, nothing more than that. I do request for someone to come forward to give me a legal assistance.
How do you sum him up as a man, based on your experience with criminal types?
Oh, I think it's a man that planned this murder weeks or months ago and has laid his plans carefully and carried them out and has planned at that time what he's going to tell the police.
I emphatically deny these charges.
He would have been acquitted in any courtroom in the world.
Oswald fut interrogé par le FBI et par la police de Dallas pendant plus de 12 heures. Il n'y eut aucune transcription officielle de cet interrogatoire. Le capitaine Wilfrid déclara par la suite que les locaux étaient trop exigus pour accueillir un sténographe. Selon une note confidentielle du FBI, J. Edgar Hoover avait donné ordre à ses services de convaincre l'opinion publique. Oswald est bien l'assassin. Il faut boucler l'enquête car on est en possession de tous les faits essentiels.
Oswald was not involved in any way. As a matter of fact, he was standing on the first floor watching the parade.
Au moment où les premiers coups de feu étaient tirés sur le président, James Hawkins, photographe de l'Associated Press, prit cette photo. À l'arrière-plan, debout sur le seuil de l'entrepôt, on aperçoit un homme qui ressemble à Lee Harvey Oswald. Le FBI, après avoir soi-disant soigneusement analysé les photos de l'arrestation d'Oswald et sa chemise, déclara que l'homme qui se trouvait sur le seuil avait été identifié. Il s'agissait d'un certain Billy Lovelady. Charles Bronson a pris ce film au moment de l'attentat. Il l'a communiqué au FBI parce que, selon lui, il montrait le dépôt de livres scolaires à l'instant précis où les premiers coups de feu étaient tirés. Après analyse, le FBI fit savoir que le film ne montrait pas le bâtiment d'où les coups de feu avaient été tirés et qu'il n'était pas assez clair pour permettre une quelconque identification.
It's not possible to look at something for 5 seconds if you're paying any attention and not recognizing a building, especially the most notorious building in the world at that time. Even worse. Not sufficiently clear for identification purposes means no Oswald with a smoking gun. If it didn't have Oswald with a smoking gun, the FBI didn't want the pictures.
Le film le plus célèbre de l'attentat est celui d'Abraham Zapruder, qui montre le président au moment où il est tué. Surprise, le FBI a refusé le film sous le fallacieux prétexte qu'il n'avait aucune valeur de preuve. Le film de Zapruder devait être dissimulé au public jusqu'à ce que Jim Garrison exige qu'on le projette durant le procès de Clay Shaw. Toutefois, si le public ne put voir ce film immédiatement après l'attentat, il en entendit parler.
2 days after the assassination of President Kennedy, the bidding started on the Zapruder film in Abraham Zapruder's living room. Richard Stolley was bidding for Life magazine, and Dan Rather was bidding for CBS TV. CBS authorized him to go up as high as $10,000, and he bid the $10,000, and by the time Zapruder finished laughing, Rather grabbed his coat, ran out of there, ran down to CBS, and out of breath, on the air, started saying, "I've just seen the film of the assassination of President Kennedy." And he goes through this whole story, and he starts recalling what went on. He says, and as the president is struck in the head, he's thrown violently forward. Violently forward? No matter where you think the shots came from, I know of no person who has seen the Zapruder film at any time through the years who doesn't have the immediate impression that the most obvious thing outside of the explosion of the head is the fact that the president is thrown to the rear.
Oswald is hustled through a doorway.
Had he told anyone he planned to kill the president?
He hasn't admitted killing the president to anyone.
Lors d'une conférence de presse, le soir de l'attentat, le district attorney Wade déclara aux journalistes que Oswald était membre du comité Cuba Libre. Jack Ruby, le propriétaire de Night Club, corrigea les propos de Wade. Il s'agissait d'un comité intitulé « Loyauté pour Cuba ».
The FBI was in full cooperation with the CIA and the perpetrators of the assassination within hours. Julianne Mercer on Saturday, the day after the assassination, is telling the FBI about how she saw Jack Ruby unload a young man with a rifle on the grassy knoll. By the next day, they had a photograph of one of the participants in the assassination. An additional day of freedom was allowed him, which would not have been allowed you, not allowed me. We would have been picked up within minutes for questioning. Right now, within minutes. He was never arrested until after he'd eliminated the patsy.
He's been shot. He's been shot.
Gordon Shanklin, responsable du bureau du FBI à Dallas, témoigna qu'il avait averti à temps la police de Dallas qu'un correspondant anonyme avait menacé d'assassiner Oswald.
Came into the clerk that was operating the switchboard. The same call I later found out are probably the same individual, called the sheriff's office.
He called Billy Grammer the night before and warned him that they had to change their plans because we're going to kill him. Another anonymous caller, probably, again, Jack Ruby, called the FBI, warned them, too. So there was advance warnings that they better do something. Ruby didn't want to do this. He had been ordered to silence Oswald.
He figured we'd arrest him, put him in jail, and he'd have to go before the grand jury, and the grand jury say, Jack, this is a bad thing that you've done, but since Oswald needed killing, well, we're going to let you go this time, but don't do it again.
Ruby was one of those contract employees, is a way to describe him. He was not an agent. By the time he had finished doing some of the things that depended on him, like unloading the rifle with grassy knoll, he had also placed himself in a position where they had found another chore for him to do. It certainly was a shock to him, but it would have been, I suggest, it would have been presented to him along these lines. Well, Jack, baby, don't say no. I mean, after all, you did participate in the assassination of the president.
Instead of throwing Oswald in the car that was already sitting there ready to go and rushing him to the hospital, they dragged him back into the jail office. They called for an ambulance, which showed up 6 or 7 minutes later.
Parkland furnishes the city with this intern on Saturdays and Sundays, and that's part of his training. And so we knew he was there. He was only 40, 50 feet away, and he was summoned over there, and he did a quick examination and started some kind of respiratory work on him.
Now, anyone with any sense, any knowledge of medicine knows that when somebody's gut shot or bleeding internally, you don't pump up and down on it. Oswald gave out with a moan and just kind of collapsed, and Oswald was dead before he ever even got to the hospital.
Lee Harvey Oswald killed no one at all. So the point is, it wasn't a question of being alone or with anybody. He had nothing to do with the assassination. To answer it more fully, one of the functions of the Warren Commission was to conceal the fact that Lee Oswald was not involved, but conceal the fact that he was not involved in any way, and to make it appear as if he were involved. And they've been very successful so far in that objective.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear.
Down this avenue of sadness, they bring President John F. Kennedy, martyred hero, to lie in state under the great dome of the Capitol. Mrs. Kennedy comes forward with Caroline in a tableau that calls for no words. Its poignancy calls only for tears.
Le président John Fitzgerald Kennedy mourut le 22 novembre 1963. Avec lui s'éteignit également sa politique étrangère.
President Johnson represents a sorrowing people.
They had Johnson there, too, his successor-to-be, in the situation where he had to hear the gunfire, and he heard the gunfire. And that is apparent by the fact that he changed the foreign policy of the United States with regard to Asia within 72 hours. As a matter of fact, he changed it on the following Sunday. After the eulogy, after attending the eulogy in Washington, he met with the chiefs of staff, and in effect his message was, tell them in Vietnam that everything's changed, 180 degrees. We're going to back them all the way.
An eternal flame is lighted before the grave by Mrs. Kennedy, the first such memorial to burn in Arlington Cemetery. She is followed by the President's brothers, Robert and Edward.
Bobby was so devastated by his brother's death that he kind of took a view, what difference does anything make? He's dead.
Après la mort d'Oswald, on se mit à soupçonner l'existence d'un complot destiné à assassiner Kennedy. Le Congrès ordonna une enquête. Cette enquête fut stoppée par un mémorandum de Nicolas Katzenbach, alors chargé de la justice à la Maison-Blanche, qui suggérait la création d'une commission présidentielle. Une autre enquête, diligentée au Texas, fut également stoppée par ce mémorandum qui disait entre autres « L'opinion publique doit se contenter de savoir qu'Oswald est l'assassin ».
Was the assassin. It's before the first witness was questioned. There was no investigation. But the public must be satisfied that Oswald was the assassin. He doesn't even say that Oswald was. Just that the public has to be satisfied that he did not have Confederates who are still at large.
Selon Nicolas Katzenbach, le Texas n'était en aucun cas le lieu pour mener une enquête.
Another investigation in Texas, which I thought was a terrible idea, because I had absolutely no confidence that the Attorney General would have the cooperation that one had to have. He didn't have the resources of the Bureau, of the CIA. And I also thought, with Lyndon Johnson coming from Texas, that was the worst possible person to investigate. Everybody would think that was totally under Lyndon Johnson's control.
Katzenbach s'inquiétait du fait que certaines personnes puissent supposer que le président Johnson avait fait assassiner Kennedy. Fletcher Prouty déclara avoir vu une note personnelle de J. Edgar Hoover qui répondait, à la satisfaction de Prouty, à la question de savoir si, oui ou non, Johnson était impliqué.
Hoover had lived across the street from Johnson for 19 years here in Washington. They were old buddies. They borrowed each other's lawnmower. You know, they were old friends. They weren't just president and head of the FBI. Johnson said, "You're sure you have the man that did it?" He said, "Oh, yes." He said, "Oswald. He's up there in the," he said, "fifth floor of the building." He missed by a floor, but that's, we'll give him credit for that. And then Johnson said, "Were any of them fired at me?" I think that clears up the question of whether Johnson was involved. If he thought they were shooting at him, he didn't hire the gunner.
You always had the fear that this could be some kind of conspiracy involving the Soviet Union. And that was such a horrible thing to try to think of. If they could miscalculate in that kind of a way, doomsday was pretty darn close.
Le président Johnson informa le président de la Cour suprême, Earl Warren, que la CIA lui avait fait parvenir des informations explosives depuis ses bureaux de Mexico, bureaux dirigés par David Etley Phillips. Selon Lyndon Johnson, la CIA avait des photos et des enregistrements de Lee Harvey Oswald s'entretenant avec l'agent russe chargé des exécutions 2 mois avant le meurtre de Kennedy. Seul un homme aussi intègre que Earl Warren pouvait empêcher une catastrophe.
So, after the meeting, after Bob initially saying no 30 times, Chief Justice Warren comes out of the Oval Room with tears running down his face, and for reasons which I think are probably essentially altruistic, has regarded to head an investigation in which he knows the result has to be, in one way or another, has to be false.
Le 29 novembre 1963, 7 jours après l'assassinat du président Kennedy, la commission Warren était créée. Elle se composait de 7 membres. L'un des premiers nommés par le président Johnson fut Allen Dulles, ancien directeur de la CIA, démis de ses fonctions par le président Kennedy après l'affaire de la baie des cochons.
Katzenbach had his way. There were no public hearings. There were hearings behind closed doors. This is the most amazing thing. If today someone, or even at that time, some judge said, this is a story about an abused child who was sexually abused, or some other salacious rape case or something, I don't want this to be public, the ACLU would be knocking on the federal courthouse with an injunction on behalf of CBS, the New York Times, the Washington Post, we have a right to know, etc. This is the investigation, hearings into the death of the President of the United States. There was not an editorial in the New York Times or the Washington Post or any other newspaper in America for 9 months as the hearings went on, saying, open the door, let the American people in.
Lors de sa première session, la commission dut prendre en compte une révélation embarrassante de Bill Alexander, district attorney de Dallas, qui avait été publiée par le Houston Post et selon laquelle Oswald servait d'indicateur au FBI. Dans son carnet d'adresse, au moment de son arrestation, figuraient le nom, le numéro de téléphone et le numéro de plaque de James Hosty, agent du FBI à Dallas. La page où figurait le numéro de téléphone de Hosty était déchirée quand le FBI remit le carnet d'adresse d'Oswald à la commission. La commission demanda à Hoover si Oswald avait servi d'informateur pour le FBI. Hoover répondit que non. La commission crut le directeur sur parole.
Something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. Stand by just a moment, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on.
Au début de son enquête, la commission Warren eut 2 principaux problèmes à résoudre. Premièrement, le président avait été tué d'une balle dans le crâne. La commission disposait de radiographies et de photos des plaies crâniennes du président. Pourtant, la commission préféra s'en tenir à des schémas.
You have no description of that head wound which is fatal in the 5 volumes of the FBI report? Cows will jump over the moon before you'll find it in the Warren report.
Ce document du FBI prouve que 2 de ses agents assistaient à l'autopsie de Kennedy. On leur proposa les radios et les photos. Le FBI les refusa.
Can you imagine anything more important in trying to solve a crime than the autopsy?
The handling of the autopsy by the government indicates deception from the outset. The burning of the notes by Commander Humes.
He burned it in the fireplace. No questions were asked.
The word was given clearly to Commander Humes of the results they wanted. And one of the results they had to obtain for the government position to stand up was that the shot came from the back.
Toutes sortes de témoins oculaires affirmèrent que le président avait été abattu de face. On les ignora. On les fit taire. Jack Ruby avertit Earl Warren et Gerald Ford qu'il voulait dire la vérité. Il demanda qu'on le transfère à Washington parce qu'il craignait pour sa vie à Dallas. Son offre fut rejetée.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. The people that had so much to gain and had such a material motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions, Jack?
Yes.
He's been shot right now.
Même après sa mort, Lee Harvey Oswald n'eut pas droit à un avocat. Mark Lane avait dirigé la campagne de Kennedy à New York en 1960. Choqué par l'arrestation bâclée de Lee Harvey Oswald et par le peu de preuves fournies par les autorités de Dallas, Mark Lane prit l'avion à ses frais pour Dallas, interrogea des témoins, des experts et écrivit un article sur ce qu'il avait trouvé.
I called Carrie McWilliams, who was the editor of Nation magazine, and I said, Carrie, I have something now I want you to publish. She said, great. About the housing problem, about drug addiction. I said, no, about the Kennedy assassination. Don't bring it over. I don't want to look at it. I said, I'd just like you to look. Don't bring it over. And he hung up. And that was the response I got throughout the United States. I went to see Jimmy Wexler, good friend of mine, editor of the New York Post. And he said, don't publish it. I said, well, the National Guardian said they would publish it. He said, no, don't. No, don't publish it anywhere. You can't get it published in any respectable publication. Don't give it to them. I said, what should I do, burn it? He said, yes. So I took it to the National Guardian. They published it. There was an editorial in the New York Post by Jimmy Wexler, my friend, which said, why did he take it there when anyone in America could have published it? Why did he start on the
La mère d'Oswald lut l'article de Mark Lane et lui demanda de défendre la mémoire de son fils.
All I wanted to do was write an article. That's all I wanted to do 28 years ago, was write this one article about the matter, and I thought that would relieve me of my responsibility. But I met with her, and she said, I read your article. Will you go before the Warren Commission and see to it that he gets a fair shake? And I said, yes. And I said, but listen, you can't really be my client, because if I find out that he did it, I want to feel free to say that. She said, do it. I'll write it down. He didn't do it. He worked for American intelligence. They sent him to do various things, but he would not kill the president. He would never do that. And so she signed a document saying I could conduct my own investigation and I could reveal whatever it is I want to reveal.
À l'origine, Mark Lane fut invité à apparaître devant la commission en tant que conseil d'Oswald. Mais par la suite, elle changea d'avis.
They called me as a witness. I guess because they found out I wasn't in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, therefore I was eligible to testify before them. And what they were trying to do was to get me to tell them everything that I knew. And I said, but I'm here as a lawyer, not as a witness. I wasn't there. I can tell you what people said, but I want to present witnesses. They said no.
I am convinced beyond any question of a doubt that the first shot that was fired did not hit me. Then I was hit.
La position officielle du gouvernement était que Lee Harvey Oswald n'avait tiré que 3 balles en 5 secondes 6 dixièmes, depuis le 6e étage du dépôt de livres. L'une de ces balles, selon les schémas établis par la commission, avait atteint le président à la tête. Une autre l'avait manqué et avait touché James Stagg, qui se trouvait sous le pont. Autrement dit, pour étayer la thèse du gouvernement, il fallait qu'une seule de ces 3 balles, la pièce à conviction numéro 399, ait traversé le président Kennedy et le gouverneur John Connally. Cette balle, quasiment intacte, celle qui, d'après les experts balistiques, était la seule qui ait pu être tirée par le Mannlicher Carcano d'Oswald, fut retrouvée par hasard sur un chariot de l'hôpital Parkland.
You might have among the shooters some individuals who were unsophisticated in their other talents and limited to, say, to shooting. which appears to be the case. But in Jack Ruby, they had a triple hat man, and one of the functions I'm satisfied was dropping that pristine bullet, number 399, if I recall, under the right stretcher.
La commission savait que si l'une des balles avait manqué son but et si l'autre avait touché le président à la tête, cela signifiait, dans l'hypothèse où seul Oswald était en cause, que la troisième, la balle magique, avait blessé le président à la gorge et touché le gouverneur Connally en de multiples endroits. Selon Garrison, en voulant prouver l'existence de cette balle magique, imaginée par Arlen Specter, la commission avait produit l'un de ses schémas les plus imaginatifs. Voici le schéma de la commission qui explique, selon le gouvernement, comment la pièce à conviction numéro 399 a provoqué tous les dégâts. La balle, selon les schémas de la commission, traverse le cou du président sans toucher un os. Ricoche pour pénétrer dans le dos de Connally, fracassant 10 cm de sa 5e côte. Ressort sous le sein droit. Ricoche vers le bas, fracassant le gros os du poignet droit. Puis bifurque sur la gauche pour se loger dans la cuisse gauche. Elle y demeure jusqu'à l'hôpital Parkland, où elle tombe sur un chariot. Parfaitement intacte.
U.S. Chief Justice Earl Warren is the bearer of the sad epilogue. The report of the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Le 27 septembre 1964, 9 mois après le début des auditions, le rapport Warren était publié. Il prouvait qu'Oswald était le seul et unique coupable. Jim Garrison déclara que la commission aurait pu économiser l'argent des contribuables, étant donné que le magazine Life était déjà parvenu à la même conclusion 8 mois et demi plus tôt, lorsqu'il avait publié en couverture la photo de Lee Harvey Oswald posant avec les armes qu'il avait utilisées pour assassiner le président Kennedy et l'agent Tippit.
The head of CBS, Bill Paley, had been involved with the CIA from the time that it was the OSS. He'd always been a loyalist to it. And CBS invested their own credibility in this at the very, very beginning. At the moment of the release of the report, they were in the middle of a 2-hour special backing the report before it had ever been released. They had produced it, they had it ready, they had the interviews done.
And they took him down to Dealey Plaza and they said, okay, Mr. Nix, where did the shots come from? Where did you hear the shots come from?
From a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
Cut, cut, cut. Now, Mr. Nix, where did you hear the shots come from?
It came from a fence.
Cut, cut, cut. They finally pulled him aside, this man did, and pulled him aside and said, now, Mr. Nix, what did the Warren Commission say? Where did they say these shots came from?
From the book depository.
And they said, that's right, and that's what we want you to say. And I remember riding home with him. He was so upset. I mean, he would hit the driving wheel, the steering wheel, and say, why? I mean, they try and make me look like I'm insane. And I know that's where they came from. I know that's where the shots came from.
They didn't intend to publish the report. As Alan Dulles said, one of the top people running the investigation, the American people don't read. But as it turned out, some of us do.
Full name is Lee Harvey Oswald, O-S-W-A-L-D.
We had learned within days that Oswald spent the summer in New Orleans. I was still district attorney. So that meant I might have an obligation to look into him because I should find out what he was doing in New Orleans.
À la Nouvelle-Orléans, Oswald avait été interpellé pour trouble sur la voie publique. Il distribuait des tracts en faveur de loyauté pour Cuba. Par la suite, il était passé à la télévision pour faire l'apologie de ses convictions marxistes.
These then are the differences between an outright communist country and countries which adhere to leftist or Marxist principles.
In your work with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, what are you advocating?
Oswald, soi-disant sympathisant castriste, travaillait pour le compte de Guy Bannister, un des plus farouches anticommunistes de la Nouvelle-Orléans. Bannister, après avoir dirigé le bureau du FBI à Chicago, était devenu détective privé. Un nommé David Ferry, autre anticommuniste fanatique affilié à la CIA, fréquentait assidûment Bannister. Jack Martin, un employé de Bannister, confia à Garrison que Ferry avait quitté son domicile lors d'un violent orage l'après-midi de l'attentat pour se rendre en voiture à Houston d'abord et à Galveston ensuite. Interrogé par Garrison en 1963, Ferry déclara ne pas connaître Oswald et affirma qu'il s'était rendu à Houston pour faire du patin à glace. Garrison remit Ferry au FBI qui le relâcha en lui faisant ses excuses. Au cours des 3 ans qui suivirent, Garrison oublia Ferry. Jamais durant cette période, Garrison, ancien militaire respectueux de l'autorité et de la hiérarchie, n'eut l'idée de remettre en question les conclusions du rapport Warren. Jusqu'au jour où, par hasard, il eut une conversation avec le sénateur Russell Long. Celui-ci lui fit part de ses doutes sur l'honnêteté du rapport Warren.
I recall my reply almost exactly. I think I said something in a state of surprise that, are you suggesting that there really was something more to it, that there might be a cover-up by the government? And his words were along the line of, well, that's a mild way to put it.
Cette conversation inopinée avec le sénateur Long fut à l'origine de l'un des procès les plus terribles et les plus spectaculaires de toute l'histoire de la Nouvelle-Orléans. Tout commença le jour où, après avoir commandé en 3 exemplaires les 26 volumes du rapport Warren, Garrison en entreprit la lecture.
We had a copy in the car, we had a copy in the office and at his home. And I'd pick him up in the morning, you know, he had a volume with him, read it in the automobile, in the office, at night taking him home. You know, weekends and Sundays and holidays, that's all he did. And I'll say this, he just about knew that 26 volume verbatim.
To show you how cosmically irrelevant the Warren Report is for the most part, to hide those little rare pieces of relevance. One of the exhibits is classified in the front as a study of the teeth of Jack Ruby's mother. Even if Jack Ruby had intended to bite Oswald to death, that still would not have been relevant.
Dans le rapport Warren, Garrison découvrit que Dean Andrews, avocat à la Nouvelle-Orléans, avait été contacté le 23 novembre pour défendre Oswald. Garrison apprit ensuite que c'était un certain Clay Bertrand qui avait fait appel à Dean Andrews. Or, ce n'était pas la première fois que ce Clay Bertrand semblait vouloir aider Oswald.
Dean Andrews was paid for, was being visited by Lee Oswald with regard to some legal problems he had with his wife, Marina, and we found that the man who used the name Clay Bertrand was making the payments.
Garrison apprit par des informateurs que Clay Bertrand fréquentait également l'officine de Guy Bannister, tout comme Oswald et Ferry. Convaincu que Ferry avait menti en déclarant qu'il ne connaissait pas Oswald et qu'il était allé patiner à Houston, Garrison ouvrit sa propre enquête officielle mais secrète.
We started digging into Oswald's background, his acquaintances, found he was being used and manipulated for some reason, dug back into those witnesses, and ultimately found ourselves dancing with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Jim went into what I call a tirade about the CIA, our CIA killing our president. And I had heard this so many times, and I was tired from my trip to Houston, and I really didn't know anything else to say, and I wanted to go home. And I just said, in a down way, I said, Jim, if the CIA killed the president, there's nothing a chicken shit assistant DA from New Orleans is going to be able to do about it. And sort of resigned that I was probably going to get fired for that comment. And he started laughing in his wonderful laugh, and then looked at me and said, there's probably nothing a chicken shit DA is going to be able to do about it either.
I thought, you know, like most investigation, you know, within a couple of months, it would come to a conclusion. I never figured it would mushroom the way it did.
Sur la trace de Clay Bertrand, Garrison trouva des témoins qui déclarèrent qu'il correspondait à la description de Clay Shaw. Clay Shaw était président de l'International Trademark et l'un des citoyens les plus en vue de la Nouvelle-Orléans. Parvenu à la conclusion que Oswald et Ferry étaient associés et que Shaw pouvait bien être le mystérieux Clay Bertrand, Garrison s'apprêtait à poursuivre ses investigations quand son enquête fut brutalement rendue publique le 17 février 1967.
There is no question in my mind, but what there will be in time, arrests of individuals following our investigation. And there is no question in my mind, but what in time to come there will be charges and there will be convictions based on the charges.
David Ferry avertit la presse que Garrison l'avait effectivement interrogé. Ensuite, il appela Lou Ivan.
Dave called my house, and my wife answered the phone and wanted to talk to me. And he's highly excited. He's got on the phone with him, and he's scared for his life.
I told them about a summer of '63 that I had gone up to Dave Ferry's apartment, which was Louisiana.
Lorsqu'il lut ce qu'on disait de Ferry et d'un complot visant à assassiner Kennedy, Perry Russo, jeune courtier en assurance qui allait devenir le témoin numéro 1 de Garrison, fit son apparition.
Ferry was in control of the gathering, and he was in one of his obsessive evenings concerning his hatred of the President of the United States.
Russo déclara à Garrison qu'il avait surpris une conversation entre Ferry, Oswald, des Cubains et Clay Bertrand qui projetaient de descendre Kennedy en tir croisé. Russo déclara que s'il se faisait connaître, c'était parce qu'il s'était trouvé là par hasard. Il refusait d'être impliqué dans l'enquête de Garrison. Mais quand on lui montra une photo de Clay Bertrand, il reconnut Clay Shaw.
Shaw was introduced to me as Bertrand.
Moins d'une semaine plus tard, Lou Ivan reçut un coup de fil désespéré de Ferry. C'était son dernier appel.
So Dad, just hold still. I'll be right over. I got a hold of Jim, and we made arrangements to put him in the old Fontainebleau.
Lou Ivan demeura avec Ferry au Fontainebleau jusqu'à une heure avancée de la nuit. Ferry lui avoua que Oswald, Bannister et Clay Shaw appartenaient tous à la CIA. Lou Ivan quitta Ferry vers 4 heures du matin.
And then, of course, the next thing we found, we got a call that he was dead in his apartment on Louisiana Avenue.
And it reads as follows: to leave this life is for me a sweet prospect.
Ferry avait laissé des notes pour expliquer son suicide. Garrison comprit qu'il fallait rapidement arrêter Clay Shaw. Sinon, il risquait de trouver d'autres suicidés sur son chemin. Le 1er mars 1967, Clay Shaw fut placé en garde à vue pour conspiration dans l'assassinat du président Kennedy.
There were marble statues of penises on his dresser. There were whips and chains in his closet. And there were hooks and beams with handprints next to them. And there were also leather straps in his bedroom that could very conceivably be used to tie a person's hands to those hooks. What they were looking for was any documents that would link these parties together.
Dans le carnet d'adresse de Shaw, Garrison trouva un numéro de boîte postale correspondant à celui qui figurait sur le carnet d'adresse d'Oswald. Quand Clay Shaw fut arrêté le 1er mars 1967, personne, en dehors des collaborateurs de Garrison, ne savait qu'on cherchait également Clay Bertrand.
Never released to the public. Nobody knew that, and no police officer knew about a Clay Bertrand.
Lou Ivan déclara que lorsqu'on prit les empreintes digitales de Clay Shaw, Aliosus Abigorst, le policier chargé de le faire, demanda à Shaw s'il utilisait des pseudonymes. Clay Shaw répondit « Oui, Clay Bertrand ».
Shaw was one of the secret supervisors of Oswald.
Selon Garrison, Shaw devait fabriquer une identité pour Oswald qui deviendrait le parfait bouc émissaire.
Not only did we not have the cooperation of the federal government, but in fact, they were the enemy. And we had 12 assistant DAs, I believe, and maybe about 10 investigators. No agency, law enforcement agency was cooperating with us, even our own police department.
He called me and said, you know about my situation, you know what I'm doing down here? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, would you come down and just take a look at us, at what we're doing down here? And I said, sure. And I had a one-year lease for this place at Stanford University. I canceled it in 15 minutes.
Selon la juridiction en vigueur en Louisiane, Garrison aurait pu inculper Shaw lui-même. Mais pour prouver qu'il protégeait les droits de Shaw et pour se couvrir en cas d'appel, Garrison traduisit d'abord Shaw devant un grand jury. Après l'audience, le grand jury se prononça pour l'inculpation.
He went through a grand jury, but I have to say it was a grand jury that he had in his pocket.
Pour se prémunir et protéger davantage les droits de Clay Shaw, Garrison sollicita une audience préliminaire devant 3 juges. L'avocat de Shaw tenta de s'appuyer sur les conclusions du rapport Warren. Les juges réfutèrent l'argument. Selon eux, ce rapport n'était qu'un simple oui-dire.
Well, I'm the lawyer who tried to introduce it, and that is, That is accurate.
L'inculpation de Clay fut donc très rapide à obtenir, mais il fallut 2 ans pour le faire comparaître en justice.
The news media's reaction to Garrison, I attributed to their feelings towards Shaw initially. But then it became directed in a very bitter fashion towards Garrison, as though he were, there was something sinister about Jim Garrison, something dangerously sinister.
They think our efforts to objectify our witness are something sinister, when we just don't have time to fool with it. So we give lie detectors now to witnesses we think are lying.
De Washington parvint une surprenante déclaration du procureur général Ramsey Clark, affirmant que Clay Shaw avait déjà été lavé par la justice de tout soupçon de complicité dans l'assassinat. Étant donné que le nom de Shaw ne figurait pas dans le rapport Warren, certains journalistes demandèrent comment il se faisait qu'on ait enquêté sur son compte. Un assistant de Ramsey Clark répondit que le procureur s'était trompé.
They had substantial data by that time because we had. Clay Shaw, for example, had been with the Central Intelligence Agency ever since he was with the Mississippi River Shipping Company.
Avant le procès de Shaw, Garrison fut conforté dans sa thèse lorsque l'avocat Dean Andrews fut inculpé pour faux témoignage. Il avait menti en affirmant sous serment que Clay Shaw n'était pas Clay Bertrand.
And that was a very important conviction, but that's never mentioned.
We got no help from the FBI or any records that we were trying to get, investigative records, which ordinarily we would have gotten. Got no help at all.
Garrison would have gladly stepped back and turned everything he had, including manpower, over to any legitimate federal authority that wanted to continue that investigation.
Des documents secrets du FBI révélèrent que Bill Alford avait raison. L'éditorialiste Jack Anderson, pourtant téléguidé par la CIA, quitta la Nouvelle-Orléans convaincu que Garrison était dans le vrai. Garrison offrit au FBI de reprendre l'affaire. Il essuya un refus.
In the preparation for the trial of Clay Shaw by the district attorney's office, was the feeling in the district attorney's office that the case would never get to trial anyway.
Either because of his death or for some other reason.
We had 2 men assigned to Jim around the clock when all these threats were coming from morning till night.
We were a close family, and my mother made sure that even though they had policemen and they would bring us to school and all, it wasn't any scary situation or anything because we were a close family.
We used to kind of play with the
Joe.
police officer. He's more of a companion.
Yeah, it was great.
Than, kind of a sign that something was wrong or we should be worried about something.
It's just one of those things where you grow up that way, that's the way you think. It doesn't seem that peculiar or different.
When you got bored playing with one of the other kids, they had this adult who was there, or so we thought, to entertain us, not to protect us.
One day, Mom decided, I guess, to get us all out of the house and said that we were going to go to the store because she was going to bake a cake. And on the way there, I guess in the rearview mirror, she picked up that an FBI car had picked her up, and so she kind of made it like a game. She was trying to lose them, but every corner we turned, they turned. It's like, lose them, Mom, lose them, but I don't think she ever did.
I'm not a person inclined to be unduly fearful, but if somebody is removed as I am from normally from the reach of people in the killing business, if I reached the point of where I was concerned about the possibility of that happening, you can just visualize the concern of people at a less protected level.
I was digging up some information, actually, for Jim Garrison and Penn Jones, Jr. of Midlothian. I was digging up some information that they wanted, in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And I parked my car on the side of the street, and I wanted to get this information. And when I came back and cranked up my car, it blew up.
L'ex-officier de police Roger Craig fut hospitalisé pendant 2 mois. Plus tard, on apprit qu'il s'était suicidé avec une carabine.
I don't like to go into that because they have families and everything else, but we lost a few witnesses by physical reasons, just like Dallas did.
Anybody that would approach him, he would bring him on board. And he was one of our biggest security leaks in the office. Jim himself, it's sad to say, without him knowing it.
One man, as I remarked recently to Mark Lane had me wondering why he always carried such a large briefcase. And it was almost as big as a suitcase. And I realize now the reason he was carrying such a large briefcase was he could take home more of our documents every day.
We had people that was brought aboard that later on that we found that they wasn't working for the interest of the investigation or for Jim. You know, and I'm talking about people that were giving our records away.
If they can't remove you, and they do assassinate in the United States, and they've been doing it for years, and I'm sure they still do, because there's no reason for them to change their policies. Now they've been continually successful. If they can't kill you, they concentrate on discreditation.
En juin 1967, au cours d'une de ses émissions, la chaîne de télévision NBC voulut discréditer la thèse de Garrison et les témoins qu'il avait réunis.
Can you say positively that the person you knew as Clay Bertrand is not the person you have seen as Clay Shaw?
Scout's honor, he is not.
In my conversations with Perry Russo, he has stated that his testimony against Clay Shaw may be a combination of truth, fantasy, and lies.
He was not investigating any facts. His only purpose was, and he stated it pointedly, he said, I'm going to take Garrison out of this. He says, you're going down with him. He said, if you want to go, he says, you go with him, because he says, you're finished. He says, now there is a way out. And I said, what would that be? He said, you go over to Biloxi, Mississippi. He said, we have a motel over there. He says, you're to walk in the motel. Clay Shaw will be in there, and you're to walk out and state on television that you do not know Clay Shaw, you have never seen him, and that he was never up at the Dave Ferry.
À l'insu de Walter Sheridan, le reporter de NBC, Garrison avait muni Perry Russo d'un micro pour pouvoir enregistrer leur conversation.
You're to state that Oswald was never at Dave Ferry's apartment. And number 4 is you know nothing about any Kennedy plotters or any plot to kill the President of the United States. And I said, if I do that, what do you suppose would happen to me in New Orleans?
Perry Russo is an amazing witness. You have to remember that the defense and the federal government and anyone interested in destroying Jim Garrison's case had 2 years to work on Perry Raymond Russo.
So I said, I wouldn't be able to even live in New Orleans. He says, what state are you interested in living in? And I was caught off guard by this, and so I said, I've always been interested in California. He said, what city? I said, I don't know. L.A., Los Angeles. I said, it's always been the city of dreams.
They worked on one of our main witnesses, Perry Russo, offered him a job in an insurance company in California.
I didn't go to Biloxi because what Walter Sheridan was asking me to do was an absolute lie. Shaw was there, Ferry was there, Oswald was there. Garrison, subsequent to this, indicted him for tampering and obstructing justice. Of course, that indictment fell in federal court. He never went to trial.
They didn't want to just discredit Jim Garrison. They wanted him destroyed.
What's that? You say that you are an American citizen and you want to see the autopsy x-rays and you want to see these hundreds of documents that...
La commission fédérale considéra que l'émission de NBC était faussée et ordonna à la chaîne d'octroyer une demi-heure de droit de réponse à Garrison.
What's the matter with you? Can't you take the word of these honorable men who've looked into it for you?
Suite à une intervention de l'humoriste Mort Saul sur NBC, Garrison fit une seconde apparition sur la chaîne.
So then he came out. He said, what are you doing these days, Mort? And Mort said, I'm an investigator for Jim Garrison. Oh, really? I mean, he was floored, although he just heard that 2 hours before. And he said, yeah. And then he said, we've uncovered a lot of interesting things. Johnny, why don't you ever have Jim Garrison as a guest on the show? At that point, there was an ovation from the audience. And Johnny sort of quieted him down and said, well, I'd like to if they will allow me to do that.
Garrison se montrait parfois impatient et grossier avec la presse. Mark Lane et Mort Saul décidèrent de le faire répéter.
Mort and I will be Johnny Carson. We'll ask you the tough questions. And you just remain really calm. He said, I can do that, Mark. I said, okay, fine. Is it true you got a mental discharge from the Air Force? Those fucking guys, I asked me the fucking question, got up and started running around the room. I said, well, this is the problem, gentlemen. So we went over and over it. And then he felt he was prepared. We had a lot easier job preparing Jim than they had preparing Johnny. Jim won the day, and Jim got tremendous applause from the audience, obviously, and it was the first time that the American people heard that kind of an allegation made on network television.
Le 22 janvier 1969, près de 2 ans après son arrestation, Clay Shaw comparut en justice pour avoir conspiré contre la vie du président Kennedy.
We knew he would commit perjury. While we felt we would win the first case, we knew that he had to lie about his associations with Oswald and Ferry, and that's where we had our strongest witnesses.
Garrison voulut faire comparaître Alan Dulles et Richard Helms de la CIA afin de les interroger sur les liens qui unissaient Oswald et Shaw à la CIA. Les autorités fédérales refusèrent. Par le biais d'une autre procédure, Garrison put en revanche obtenir le film d'Abraham Zapruder. Pour la première fois, un jury de citoyens américains allait voir le film de Zapruder dans son intégralité.
All any intelligent person, even a child, has to do is look at the Zapruder film. After the shot hits him in the head, the critical shot, John Kennedy goes backwards towards the back of the car. So he's almost blown out of the back of the car. John Kennedy was obviously shot from the front. Everybody knows it, and especially the government.
There was a great feeling of depression among the news media. I'm talking about this established news media, because Garrison had pierced the bubble of which the news media had encased the case in.
Le film était très convaincant, les témoins de Garrison également. Pourtant, l'un d'eux, Charles Speisel, empêcha Garrison de gagner son procès.
The question I posed to Jimmy is, didn't anyone talk to this guy before you put him on the stand?
An accountant in New York City who had said that he had met Shaw and Oswald at a party.
We had no idea that he had this sort of background or would admit to this sort of background.
On cross-examination, this accountant testified that when his daughter came back to him from Louisiana, instead of saying, "Hello, darling," he brought her into the room in his apartment and fingerprinted her, and then checked the fingerprints against those on file to make sure it was really his own daughter, and that the government had not substituted a duplicate for her. The jury heard this, and this was the end.
I have always felt that he was one of those plants.
The case had been destroyed by calling that one witness. I did go to the Hall of Records in Louisiana and found out that that building had, at the time this gentleman said he met Shaw and Oswald there, been owned by Clay Shaw.
Autre surprise, le juge Haggerty n'autorisa pas le policier Aliosus Abigorst à témoigner que lors de son arrestation, Clay Shaw avait reconnu utiliser le pseudonyme de Clay Bertrand. Le 1er mars 1969, le jury acquitta Clay Shaw. Lors d'un sondage ultérieur, la plupart des jurés estimèrent qu'il y avait eu complot pour assassiner Kennedy, mais que les preuves étaient insuffisantes pour affirmer que Clay Shaw y avait été mêlé. Shaw avait déclaré sous serment qu'il ne connaissait ni Oswald ni Ferry. Garrison tenta de le poursuivre pour faux témoignage.
In a move which is, I still think, highly illegal and probably unprecedented, the local federal courts gave an order that we could not prosecute him. Reasons are still obscure, but they blocked the prosecution, and it would have been an absolute certainty of conviction.
We think of the Scopes case today as a great victory. Clarence Darrow lost that case.
Quelques années après le procès, une photo parut montrant 3 hommes lors d'une soirée. C'était David Ferry, Clay Shaw et Lee Harvey Oswald.
If you had it to do over again, would you launch another investigation?
Yes, I would have to, because once you know that something was hidden, once you know what happened, then you have no choice.
Les notables et les médias firent campagne pour que Garrison démissionne. Il fut réélu. Comme Garrison était toujours en mesure de poursuivre sa tâche, ce fut le gouvernement qui le poursuivit.
Hounded, harassed by a variety of government assets and agencies, the FBI, for example.
He was prosecuted himself on 2 separate occasions after the trial of Clay Shaw. Once he was charged with accepting a bribe. In essence, he not only won that case and was totally exonerated, but it was nevertheless the springboard for the next case, which basically was that he failed to report income and pay income tax on the bribe which he had never received, and he won that case as well.
L'incroyable pression qu'on fit peser sur Garrison pendant 2 ans provoqua des problèmes dans le couple. Jim et sa femme Liz divorcèrent.
There were pressures that my wife felt, and so each one of us had to end up being an entirely different person, although she was relatively easy to live with, a very sweet person. So, but I think it was a weight on the scale, certainly.
My mother has always wanted just a close family, you know, a normal family life for her kids, and there was no way that a normal family could exist in that situation. But I'm sure it put a lot of pressure on it. But as to say that that was the exact or the only reason, I don't know.
Trop occupé dans le privé pour défendre son poste de magistrat, Garrison échoua dans son 3e mandat. Il exerça 3 ans dans le privé, écrivit un roman, fut élu à la 4e cour d'appel de Louisiane, puis réélu pour un second mandat.
And I realized I was suddenly an object of interest to the agency. I guess I might have assumed that earlier, but it didn't occur to me. I guess part of me still thought I was living in the country I was born in. So the conclusion I would give you was they did everything they could to tear the office apart, to tear the trial apart. And they did tear the trial apart. But the time came when I was no longer district attorney. Whatever their explicit objectives were, they accomplished them, but I would have to reply. On the other hand, the agency, when it was all over, they knew they'd been danced with.
Le 18 juillet 1979, le comité restreint de la Chambre des représentants fit connaître ses conclusions. Il y avait bien eu complot pour tuer John Kennedy et Martin Luther King. Les conclusions de ce comité vengeaient finalement Jim Garrison et tous ceux qui avaient critiqué le rapport Warren. Garrison, qui avait pris sa retraite en 1991, juste avant son 70e anniversaire, tirerait davantage de satisfaction de la revanche qu'allait lui offrir le cinéma. Oliver Stone fonda son film JFK sur l'enquête de Garrison et sur le procès de Clay Shaw. Malgré les critiques qu'on a pu adresser au film, il donne de l'attentat une vision nouvelle, soigneusement censurée auparavant par les médias. Il apportait également espoir et réconfort aux enfants de Jim Garrison.
There's so much criticism of it because they're saying it distorts history, but what's the alternative except the Warren Commission is history? I hope it succeeds in at least letting people know that something wasn't right and they should be more skeptical of what their government tells them and what they read in the papers.
I wish I could say in heroic words that yes, I would do it again, but actually what the investigation cost me, a magnificent office which took years to build up, and a tremendous amount of emotional involvement, not unrelated to my personal concern about what happened to John Kennedy and what was obviously happening to America. I'd say that I don't know if I would do it again because of the emotional price I paid.
Garrison déclara qu'il ne s'était jamais pris pour un héros. Tout simplement, il avait fait son travail de magistrat. Les véritables héros, c'étaient les simples citoyens américains qui, pour faire triompher la vérité, n'hésitaient pas à mettre en péril leur emploi ou même leur vie. Dans un de ses ouvrages, Garrison a écrit que dans cette tragédie américaine, la véritable ironie, c'est que dans un pays qui, aujourd'hui enfin, désire entendre la vérité sur l'assassinat de Kennedy, il ne reste plus qu'un témoin oculaire en vie. Cet unique témoin a vu 2 hommes derrière la fameuse palissade, et ce témoin est un sourd-muet.